Hey, Anissa Coy here with Firehouse Education and this week's Ask Anissa video column. And this week, as you can probably tell, I'm not alone on camera. I have the ever handsome Mr. Coy here with me. And today is actually kind of a serious topic, you guys, that we want to talk to you about. It is January 26th, Sunday today, the filming of this. And we want to talk to you about what is turning out to be the largest national disaster in our natural disaster, excuse me, in the history of the United States. And that is the fires that are going on in Southern California right now. Now, there's two fires in particular that are happening, the Palisades fire and let me see, do you remember, Kevin? Oh, the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire. And these statistics on this, you guys, is extraordinary and overwhelming. I want to share those with you now. And the purpose of us coming on and doing this video is, as you can imagine, our cell phones and our emails have been blowing up for the past couple of weeks. And we are coaching and teaching with a lot of companies that are boots on the ground right now. We just really wanted to reach out because there has been a ton of really great, amazing questions that people have been asking, and we want to get as much help out there as we can. And you know, when you're responding to a cat loss situation like the hurricanes that a lot of us are used to responding to, it's very different when you're responding to a wildfire and this kind of scenario. So we felt it was really important to give you guys some real key information today. What I want to do first is I want to share these stats with you, okay? So right now, as of January 25th, there have been over 200,000 people evacuated because of those two fires. Unfortunately, there are 28 deaths because of the fires. More than 57,000 acres have burned, and there's over 16,000 structures that are damaged and or destroyed. And I want to point out that that doesn't include the structures that maybe have smoke contamination and intrusion that no one even knows about right now. Okay, there's also estimated to be 250 to 275 billion dollars in damage on these fires so far, and they're not out. They are not contained. At this time. Again, these stats are all from January 25th, so that was from yesterday and the latest available. And Kevin, how much is our industry normal on an annual basis as far as the dollar revenue?
Well, that's already exceeded our annual nationwide cost of insurance of all types damages. You know, we're usually somewhere in the 200 plus billion annually, and that includes everything. That includes all the climate stuff, all the everyday household incidences that we see combined in this whole country. So
Right.
and we're not even talking about the two hurricanes we had this year that have added to that cost. So total this year is astronomical.
Right. Yeah, because we're talking 250 to 275 billion in this one particular natural disaster, not the whole entire industry. So it's definitely very mind-boggling to think about that. So what we wanted to talk to you guys about, one, we wanted you to understand the magnitude of what's going on here. Okay. And we've seen this. We've been teaching cat loss and wildfire work for years and have done several ourselves, boots on the ground. And there's a huge need for restorers who are going to go do this kind of work to really understand what it is that needs to be done and how to do it. Because like I said, it's not like responding to a hurricane, right, Kev? It's not going in after, tornadoes touchdown and things like that. And I think what makes it so unique and different is that there's actual damage and contamination that's done that you literally cannot see unless you properly know how to test and source out the level of contamination. So there's some tricky things here, okay? And there are three key areas that we want to cover with you today, all right? One is we want you to be very clear and ask yourself these questions. One, what type of work are you going to do? Because there are a few kinds that you're going to be dealing with things, right? Content, structure, so on. Um, how how do you properly assess the scope of work that needs to be done when you are dealing with each individual type of a structure, whether it's a house or a commercial building? And importantly, guys, how are you going to get paid? All right. Um, and each of these topics are kind of there's quite a bit to cover. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this video up. We're going to do a 3-part series. All right, and we're going to cover each one of these so that you can get real in depth with each one, or we can with you. Okay. So first off, we're going to talk about what type of work are you going to do? Do you know what that is? Kevin, talk a little bit about like what kind of work do we do when we go out and do wildfires?
Right. So our industry has a spectrum of services that we can have. We could be a complete services operation where we do the entire project, A to Z. And then there's a lot of uh, parts and pieces that we can specialize in. And so, some people may specialize in the reconstruction side of the project. Others might do the abatement only, where they're going in and doing the decontamination.
Mm.
Um, and that would break into two sections, one being the structure, and then the other being the contents of the home. And then subcategorically, we have the exterior of the structure and the interior of the structure, as well as the contents, which can be broken down into hard and soft goods. And so each and every one of those can be a separate service or process unto itself, if not combined by one full service operation. So it depends on, what part of the industry you're specializing in. And each one is a specialty unto itself
Right.
and requires certain skill sets and equipment and processes.
Well, and resources, right, Kevin? Because if you have a crew of, say, 5 people or 7 people or 30 people that you're going to go respond, that's going to mean you've got a different ability to maybe handle not only soft contents, but which is like the laundry, okay, for those who
Mm-hmm.
aren't aware, and hard
Right.
contents, right? So, as a general rule, you are going to be handling the content decontamination as well as structure decontamination. Structure decontamination is the what a lot of people, and we have in the past referred to as cleaning the structure, but really you're decontaminating. So I want you to really be aware of the language you're using with this. But structure decontamination and hard contents decontamination in our experience is the minimal you're going to need to do. Okay. Doesn't mean you have to do demo. Doesn't mean you have to do rebuild. Doesn't mean you have to paint the walls if that needs to be done. That could be passed on to a contractor or some other restoration companies that's going to handle all of those parts and pieces. You can do
Mm-hmm.
hard contents and not do soft contents. Okay. Some companies just do soft contents. All they do is the laundry services. So you need to decide, what are my resources? How many people do I have? How much bankroll do I have? Because that'll matter as to how much you're potentially going to do. And then what's my equipment? What are my resources, supplies, materials, subcontractors that you may have lined up to help you, that sort of thing. Okay.
Right.
So it's just really important to understand the level of the different types of work. So we've got the soft goods we talked about, right, Kev? So
Mm-hmm.
so that's the laundry. Okay. So there could be everything involved from dry cleaning to what goes literally in a washing machine, okay, to stuffed animals, that sort of thing, draperies. And then we have hard contents. And the hard contents are generally, depending on which I want you to talk about here in a second, Kevin, where you're at in the fire affected area, are generally going to be a decontamination in place. It's not necessarily something you have to pack out. So that's also something to think about, right? You can do more with less resources if you're not having to pack out a house, right? And then we've got the structure decontamination and or cleaning. And then you actually, again, like I said, have the demo and the rebuild. And where you're at in relation to the epicenter is going to dictate as to how involved each of those 4 areas are, right, Kevin? Talk a little bit about that.
Right. Yeah. So let's look at and this would be in any type of cat loss scenario. catastrophic loss being what that's short for. And we have a lot of subcategories to this because again, this may be things that you take on the entire project and sub out the portions that you either don't do or don't want to do or have specialty tradesmen coming in to take care of those types of things. So for instance, if you were cleaning the structure, you may not be have the equipment and the skill sets to do the HVAC system. So you may be bringing somebody in to do that. You may not be doing the floor coverings, those type of textiles. So you may be bringing a company in to do those types of things. If it's hard surface tile or if it's carpeting or, a subcategory of soft goods would also be textiles. So our rugs and our high end, tapestries and things like that you'd find in houses.
Right.
But what we want to do is look at the epicenter and then the outside or the concentric rings coming out. So we've got the center or the main devastation of an area where those homes were probably just completely destroyed and there's maybe nothing left but slabs of concrete and chimneys and burned out cars, and so there's really not anything you can do there. There's some cleanup to be done, and potentially depending on what that homeowner wants to do, they may be wanting to rebuild. So that's a whole different category. And I'm going to add that in this particular scenario, we are dealing with the state of California, and that is very relevant and significant because in all the teaching we've been doing for decades, we always refer to the United States and then the state of California because the regulatory environment in there is probably the toughest of any part of the country, and you do need to be able to be compliant in those areas so you don't get yourself in trouble. And that's another part of a conversation we'll get into later. Just bear that in mind. So the concentric rings out from the epicenter, as we get further away from that total devastation area, we're going to get into some damages, varying amounts of damage, actual structure damage. And then as we get further out, we pick another ring out. We get into maybe areas where there's a lot of smoke and outside damage, but not necessarily inside damage. And then again, farther out into that next concentric ring, we're looking at areas that have a lot of smoke damage and residue. So they're dealing with odor and residue and those abatements either externally or internally. As we get further away, again, we're getting lighter and lighter. Not to say that there isn't abatement that needs to be done in every one of those areas, but just understand and pick the level of cleaning or abating and decontamination that you're capable of with your crew and your resources and your skill sets.
Right, right. Yeah, because in some of those areas that are closer to that epicenter, you might actually have black walls that you're dealing with, right?
Scorching.
Oftentimes what we will see is that you walk in and we're going to talk about this in our next video in great detail, but you can walk into the structure and not see a thing and not even realize from a visual inspection that there's anything wrong in the house. Like it's crazy. Right. And I will tell you this, that in mine and Kevin's experience and 25 years of doing this, I will guarantee you that when there is a wildfire and or some kind of a mass fire situation that goes on throughout neighborhoods, I will guarantee you there are hundreds, if not thousands of homes that people never turn in a claim and never have decontaminated because they don't even know that that's what they're living in. They just don't know. And I don't know if over time, maybe it dissipates and, they can't tell their house stinks inside because it stinks everywhere, right? When you're walking around the yard, it smells. They might.
And you get accustomed to the smell, and then you become what we call nose blind.
Yeah.
Where you walk into a house and you may have noticed an initial odor, but after you've been in the building for a while, or if you're still living in the structure, you really aren't noticing it. And again, to your point, if it smells outside and it smells inside, it's hard to tell. Where is that odor starting and stopping? Is that because it's in the house, or is it because I just opened the door and walked in and I'm still smelling? And again, I'm going to get my body gets accustomed to the odor, and then it kind of just becomes a non-issue. And so it makes it very difficult to tell. And again, if there's a light soiling over the entire surface of the inside of the building, it's hard to distinguish, where is it contaminated or not, because everything's kind of got that same light tint that we can't discover without some assessments, and then
Right.
and we'll talk about those.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And there's kind of a balance here, guys, right? Like, so even if, like, let's say it's a hurricane that goes through, if we got 2 feet of water in a neighborhood, the 2 feet of water kind of has to recede before we can go in and start, right? Well, it's kind of like that with a wildfire too. If the hillside is on fire behind the community, it's going to be kind of hard to go in and start work because you're just going to have recontamination happen, right? So it's kind of a delicate thing. And
It's
sometimes,
also a safety issue.
oh yeah, yeah,
But
totally.
I'm sure there's neighborhoods that you're not even allowed to get into because
I'm
they're
positive. Yeah,
concerned with security and safety and
there.
looting, and again,
Yes,
we don't, if the fire, if the wind direction changed, you could push the fire back the other
right,
direction. So until it's well out of the area and they've deemed it safe to
right,
re-enter, you're
right.
going to have to wait on those structures.
Absolutely. There are homeowners right now that still can't even get into their own homes. So that being said, you just have to understand that your outside environment you have to take into play as well. Okay. So if you don't have the kind of resources to handle a job that's more intense because you're closer to the epicenter, trust me, there are tons of jobs that are out there on those outer edges that need help, that need people to come and do the milder, if you will, decontamination processes that need to happen in those homes. Okay. So,
Yeah, and it could literally, I mean, they talked about 16 some odd thousand destroyed structures, but there's untold thousands
oh,
of contaminated and structures that need abating that we haven't even been able to get a
in
number on yet.
in that population, Kevin, in that demographic, I will guarantee you there is a few 100,000 structures that need help. I mean, they need contractors, restoration, certified people that can come in and know what they're doing and are trained properly how to handle this. Desperately needed in California. So that is the first thing we wanted to go over with you guys, right? What work are you going to do? Understand the different levels of work and type of work that need to be done in a wildfire scenario, and then decide what of those are you going to handle? If all of them, some of them, like where are you at in that realm? And we didn't even talk, we tapped into, like touched it, but this video is not about that, which maybe Kevin, you and I should do one on this. Understand, as Kevin said, this is California and it is definitely a very regulated state. Okay. You have to know if you're coming from out of state, even if you're in state in California and you're going to a different city limits or municipality of some kind, you have to know the current business rules and regulations and laws in that municipality, let alone are there laws for decontamination, right? Are there
Yeah,
laws
yeah,
for
we have
abate?
city, we have state, we have county.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
there's just
yes.
it's crazy.
Yes. And so in this scenario, thankfully, you are not going to probably need to, in the majority of cases, transport people's household belongings. You can do what we call that clean in place decontamination. However, if you do move somebody's belongings in the state of California, you have to have a special license just for transporting somebody's personal belongings. Okay. So
And to
you
add
got
to
to
the
know.
complication of that, even if you say, okay, well, I don't have that license, I don't want to do it, I'm going to subcontract that to another company that does have a license, you still have to have that license, even if you don't do it. So
Right.
that's how complicated and complex
Right.
and
So the point is,
regulated it is.
know your municipality and state laws, rules, and regulations when it comes to doing business, and in particular, our type of business in that state. Okay. All right, guys, we didn't want to make this a super long video. So we have 2 more videos coming up for you. Be sure and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you want to be sure not miss out on those as they come out. When you're seeing this, may already all be out. I'm going to get them up as soon as I can for you guys. Also, if you're watching this on our magonline.com, be sure that you are subscribed there and comment below if there is a question or a topic you would like us to cover for the wildfire situation in particular, but really any restoration question or topic that you would like. So be sure and stay tuned for the next video where we are going to get into very deeply how to properly assess a wildfire situation, by each individual structure so you know what your scope of work needs to be to properly decontaminate. All right, well, you know the drill. If you have a question for Anissa, please send me an email, anissa@firehouseeducation.com, and in the subject line, please put Ask Anissa, and maybe I will feature you on next week's Ask Anissa video column.